All right, so my assistant John is going to help us today. This class will be mostly focused on opening the shoulders and the rib cage within the context of Vinyasa yoga and building up familiar sequences. I'm going to avoid using props because I don't assume all of you have props at home, but you probably all have a chair. So I'm going to use this piano stool. It's really anything you might have at hand, some kind of seat, some kind of chair. So make sure you have something nearby. We won't just grab it just yet. And then we'll find a sitting position. Easy spine. Maybe the eyes closed for a moment. And maybe you just become less worried about what's coming in through the eyes as you shift gears and start to feel into the spine, and just play with some shoulder rolling and feel into the upper body. Feel into any tension that might have crept into the shoulders, the ribs, the neck, into the jaw, into the muscles of the face. So kind of starting a little bit wiggly, a little bit experimental. Probably starting to notice your little patterns where you carry tension. So for me, it's my left shoulder, and I can feel all my clicky spots and grippy spots in my left side. I'm just kind of massaging into those. And then from that place of having a little more detail, of understanding what you have to work with today, now we'll head towards a moment of stillness, of stack through the spine, of drawing yourself a little bit taller. Just really receiving those tight spots. We all have homework in the shoulders and the rib cage and the neck. Just taking note of what you want to work on today. Starting to establish your breath technique, that rib cage breath as we stabilize around the hips. Check in with the weight of the head. So we have this big round skull perched on this narrow little neck. So I'm just going to check in with the balance, the way I'm carrying the weight of the head, the activation through the neck. And I'm going to gently lift my tongue to the back of the palate. So it's like you're picking yourself up with the base of the tongue. This will create a little ha sound in the back of the throat. This will also activate the deeper neck extensors and hopefully release some grip that might be hiding in the back of the skull, around the jaw, back of the neck. Relax the shoulders. Continuing your awareness down through the core. And then from here, open the eyes, and again I'm going to explore the shoulders. Rolling back, rolling forward. And then I'm going to take my arms out, really expand across the room, and just reach a couple times. Like you're a rubber band being pulled one way and then the other. Just continuing to expand across the room. Notice the shift through the shoulders, the lateral shift in the spine. Encouraging you to gather up the muscles around the hips so you're really boosting up from underneath and expanding out through your wingspan. And let the neck join in with this movement. really send those fingers like tendrils across the room. Maybe slowly expanding a little more. Increasing your range of motion. Then I'm going to come back to neutral and I'm going to swivel the palms up, biceps up. Take the arms up overhead. And really feel into the spine, into the shoulders. The shoulders can elevate up, and I feel like sometimes there's an instruction in yoga where they tell you to drop your shoulders down your back. And yeah, that creates length in the neck, but it also kind of discombobulates your shoulders. So I'm going to rise up, and I'm not afraid of my shoulders rising up towards my head because of the rotation that I have. So shoulders can elevate, but they're also going to externally rotate. And notice how this turns the palms towards each other. It turns your biceps towards each other. And this creates space, so it doesn't wind up here. If I turn this way and roll my thumbs down, it tends to create this tension that's not so nice. So don't be afraid to elevate the shoulders, but externally rotate at the same time. Then the neck is free. Maybe building up some heat in the shoulders. Keep lifting up through the back of the throat. And release it down. And again, circle out the shoulders. Roll the neck, roll the head. If sitting on the floor gets a little tight or tiresome for you, go ahead and stack up a little cushion or a few blocks or whatever you have at hand. Boost up something under your hips to sit on. It'll make the sitting position a little more sustainable. We won't stay here too much longer, but I'm going to stay for another moment or two. You're going to bring the hands behind your head. Your thumbs are pointing down and your thumbs come to the back of your neck. And I'm like picking up my head. So imagine you're trying to pick yourself up off the floor. And you'll get that elevation. I'm going to consciously press the elbows up to the ceiling. My thumbs are feeling into the back of the neck and kind of massaging into that space between the skull, the ears, the neck, the jaw. Making sure that your hands aren't shoving you down. So I'm really picking myself up through the back of the throat. My elbows are moving skyward, and I'm going to bring them closer in as they move skyward. This, by the way, is a really nice way to think about headstand. So there's loads of heat. I'm already burning in my shoulders a little bit as I pick myself up through the neck. And then from here, with the elbows collected and reaching up, then I'm going to take my arms back up. So maybe feeling into that same action, just coming from a different place. Gives you a little more insight, maybe a little more activation. So your shoulders are very much awake right now. And the more you swivel and spread, the easier it is to elevate without feeling clamped in the neck. So my shoulders are rising up and yet my neck is free. And this is really helpful for downward dog, for handstands, anytime you're working overhead. Good. Just staying committed to that shape, to that reach, to that spread. Because after a while, you're going to start to wilt and maybe lose your attention span. So reestablishing with each moment. Shoulders starting to know about it. And then I'm going to cactus on my way back down. So notice the hand position. My palms are forward. And then I'm going to move down further past cactus. Elbows really squeeze to the side body. Hands really press back. So if my hands relax, I'm losing the point of it. So I'm going to press back. Shoulders are going to squeeze down towards the sides of the rib cage. I'm going to kind of tick-tock a little bit. Hands stay sparky. I'm still picking myself up with the back of the throat. And as I explore here and massage the neck, and keep that squeeze. So I'm really trying to touch my elbows to the sides of my rib cage. And upper trapezius is a bit tight on me today, so it's not letting me squeeze all the way down. I'm starting to open up across all those muscles that were reaching you overhead a few breaths ago. And keep reestablishing the hands. One more breath here. And then I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to weave the hands all the way around behind my back. I'll start to roll the shoulders together and down. Lift through the chest, picking up the base of the tongue. And one more opportunity to explore the neck. So from here we'll swivel around to all fours and start to wake up the grips in the hands. So what I mean by that is anytime I'm putting weight down through the hands and the shoulders, I want to think about the strength in my hands so I'm not just collapsing onto my wrist. And I also want to warm up some mobility in the wrist. Just playing, rolling over the fingers and coming back. Stretching into both the front of the hand and the back of the hands. Slowly, curiously. And then I'm going to sit the hands under the shoulders. I'm going to keep the neck nice and long and think about the shoulder position more than the spinal position. So it can kind of look like cat and cow at first, but it's not really cat and cow. It's my shoulders squeezing together and spreading apart rather than arching and curling the spine. And we'll blend this into cat and cow in a second, but first just getting that conversation across your shoulder girdle. So each time I push the floor away, I'm using my chest, I'm squeezing forward, and I'm like spreading my t-shirt across my back. And then the opposite, I'm going to squeeze the shoulders together, drop the chest, and the pecs relax with that. I guess another way to say this is, as I push the floor, I'm using the front of my body, and as I melt towards the floor, I'm using the back of my body. So chest closes, shoulders close. Chest closes, shoulders close. And then now that we have this action going in the shoulders, now I'm going to blend it into a cat and cow. And now the pelvis curls with me, and the head drops with me. So I still have that squeeze and press going on through the rotator cuff or through the shoulder girdle. And now I'm coordinating that with more spinal movement. So right now this is pretty simple. Eyes up, tail up at the top of my inhale. Eyes down, tail down at the base of my exhale. Now I'm going to get a little more interesting. So you're going to start all curled up in cat pose, and I'm closing my chest and I'm spreading up through my back. And first I'm going to move my tail. So the first thing, the tail lifts. I'm starting to climb the action up my back. This will eventually pull my shoulders together, and eventually my eyes are the last thing to come up. Then I'm going to kick off the wave again from the tail. So the first thing I'm going to do is tuck my tail, zip my jeans, so to speak, start to close the chest, and that will eventually pull the eyes down. So it's more like a galloping wave through the spine. I'm moving as slowly and as curiously, really, as my quality of attention will allow. This will hopefully be even slower than your breath. So just breathe smoothly and naturally and deeply as you slowly start to snake through the spine and try to unlock, especially through the rib cage, the shoulders, the neck. Now the hips and the waist are going to be a little freer here to roll through this action. So again, concentrating on the ribs, the shoulders, the neck, the head. And then the next time you look up, so eyes up, tail up, now I'm going to sink back to a child's pose and take an opportunity to wiggle and massage and maybe take your hands over to the right and over to the left. And then lift up to your first downward dog of the day. Just pedal off the legs. So, remembering that reaching and yet that spreading. So my shoulders are rolling wide, my biceps are rolling up, which creates that space to reach and push the floor as the shoulders rise without clamping my neck. So I'm going to check and nod my head yes and shake my head no. Hips pulling further back across the room as I drop one heel onto the other. I'm going to come back to all fours for a second and just think more square. I'm going to put one elbow on the ground and just create an easy little twist here. Now hopefully your arm can be straight. If not, that's a goal to work towards. Notice how I'm rotating my gaze with the twist. And then come back to center and switch sides. So I'm going to put the other elbow down, just creating an easy twist. Pushing the floor, nice long neck, rotating the eyes along that spin through the spine. Come back up. Now, a little stronger, we're going to take a twist in our downward dogs. So, I'll talk you through it. You're going to lift to downward dog. And then I'm going to step in a little bit. So this is a slightly shorter dog. And I don't really mind about straight legs or whether the heels are on the floor or not, but I'm really going to energize the thighs back. You'll feel a little stretch running down through your hamstrings. Again, if the heels are on the floor and the legs are straight, that's fine, but don't be distracted too much by that intention. I'm really going to push back. Shift all your weight into your left hand. I'm going to look under that arm. Your right hand is going to catch the opposite knee. So my right hand's catching my left knee, and now I'm really pressing overhead while I create a twist. And I'm really energizing the legs back. Now you might take that hand and walk it down towards your heel. Come back to the breath. And we'll mindfully switch sides. So I'm going to replace my right hand, take a moment and wiggle out. Reestablish that attention, the legs reaching back, kind of pinning your weight back, as if you're picking yourself up by your hips. You're going to shift into your right hand, look under the right arm, and the left hand comes across, catching your knee as you draw yourself into a twist. Really posting off of that strong arm. So that arm can reach overhead. I'm pushing the floor and I'm keeping that strong rotation so it's not clamping into my neck. You might creep your left hand down towards your right ankle. Steady the breath and just study your pose. back to center. Drop down to all fours. In this child's pose, I'm going to take the arms out nice and goofy, so you really have space to experiment and play with the shoulders. Maybe the head is on the floor, or maybe you're going to pick up the head so that you can explore more movement. Alternating heated moments with moments to release and explore. And then I'm going to rest the head on the ground, take the hands up, lace the hands behind the back. One hand pulls against the other as you lift the ground. And roll up. We'll come back to all fours. And then from here, I'm going to lift back to downward dog. Come up onto the tippy toes, zip the belly, surf into a plank. So in some of my sequences were very traditional with our sun salutes, rolling through plank, upward dog, downward dog. I won't do as many of those today, but I am going to do a couple of planks just because they're so good for firing up everything, legs into core into shoulders. And then we'll use that heat we built up in the shoulders to stretch them out. And dive back to your dog, wiggle out. Keep questioning your dog here. I'm pushing the floor away as much as I'm spreading my shoulders, so I really have engagement overhead. Roll up to the tippy toes again, zip the belly, hollow up. Try to get some nice conversation through the spine as you slowly arrive into this nice high plank, pushing the floor, zipping the core. And then dive back to your dog. And drop the knees. Again, come back to all fours. We'll use this as a space to create release and play. So from all fours, I'll turn around. You're going to take your right leg up. You're going to bend that leg. And notice the foot on the floor can windshield wiper around. I'm going to swing that foot open. Flip the belly open. Slowly peel up and explore. Now this is nice because not only do you have a lot of room to explore your shoulder, but you have a lot of room to explore that flying hip as well. So really experiment and circle through that shoulder, especially with our attention or intention today. Maybe looking up and looking down. Wrapping your arm behind your back. Flipping open. And then I'm going to circle around and I'm going to bring that hand in underneath my posting arm and curl in the opposite direction. Really push the floor away. And slowly alternate between the two. So you're like feeling and massaging through that flying shoulder. You're getting a nice release continuing down through the whole right side and down into that hip as well. And we'll pivot back around to all fours. And we'll switch sides. And again, I'll turn so I don't flip away from you guys. You're going to take your left leg back. Bend the knee. And that foot on the floor spins behind you. So that's really what opens this pose up. Both feet are on the ground behind your mat. And then you roll open. And just take a little time to explore and question. Look up and look down. And then I'm going to take this arm, wrap it around behind my back like a little vine, flipping the chest open. And then exploring the other range of motion, so this becomes like a really complicated cat and cow. I'm going to curl in under my posting arm, push the floor away as I close. Inhale, circle open once more, wrapping that arm around my back, creating a little back bend. And continue to explore in your own time, feeling your way through. Flip it back over. And lift back up to your downward dog. Pedal out the legs, hopefully feeling a little more aware, a little more completely tuned in with the shoulders, the upper back, how you're reaching overhead. Roll up onto the tippy toes, zip the belly hollow and surf forward, find a plank again, head reaching forward, push the ground. Another little moment of heat so that we can create another moment of release. Drop. Now this time I'm going to take that chair that I was talking about. So I'm going to bring it towards the front of my mat. And we're being more specific with shoulders. So I'm going to start here on the back of my elbows on the chair. I'm going to take prayer position. So this is an important detail because if your wrists fall and you wind up like grabbing opposite elbows, it's just not the same effect. So my hands are in prayer position, and then I'm going to walk back, and see if my head can drop through. And I still have that overhead reaching. It's almost like my elbows are pushing the chair away, and I still have that external rotation. And that's why the hands are together. Because if they were to melt past each other, you'd lose that external rotation. So if this is a lot, don't push it. If you get a lot of sharp, pinchy sensations, don't push it. And chances are, if you feel sharp and pinchy while you're here, you could do with a little more elevation of the shoulders and a little more external rotation. This will create space through the shoulder girdle, through the rotator cuff. Now you might be different. Of course, that's a generalization, so I only offer this as an experiment. And if a slightly different alignment works better for you, please feel free. You're the ultimate authority with your anatomy. But hopefully finding a place where you can really melt. And then I'm going to hang out here, and in the context of dropping, like I'm dropping my forehead towards the mat, within that intention of dropping into the shoulders, my hips are gently going to cat and cow. And as I change, just thinking about rotating the pelvis, I'm going to notice how that really affects the shoulder conversation. So the changing alignment in the hips changes the way the pull is being reflected up through the connective tissue, up through the muscular actions. Hopefully offering ever more detail into our patterns. Good. And then exhale, roll in. So I'm going to leave that to the side. And again, so looking at from a headstand perspective, right? We've done all this prep to lengthen through here, to get power reaching overhead, and we're going to come back to this little shape again. So my thumbs are pointing down, I'm gathering the back of my skull, and I'm really lengthening my neck, and I'm gathering my elbows in. Good. Now the only difference between this and like if I were going to do a headstand is that my hands are fairly far down. My thumbs are down on my neck. Now I'm going to start to shift and bring my hands up. I'll move my hair. So my hands are going to climb up so that the blades of my wrists are as high as my skull, if that makes sense. So that if there was something across the top, it would land on the ulnar ridge here just as much as it would land on my head. So this is what you want in a headstand. I want to be bearing my weight down through my forearms, collecting my elbows so that you have a really solid tripod. Your elbows, your wrists, just as much as your head. In fact, at first when I'm setting up, it's like you're sliding a piece of paper across. So I can put this structure on the floor, and you could slide a piece of paper under my head. My head is not on the ground yet, yeah? I'm doing basically the same thing that we were drilling. Yeah. So with that intention in mind, I'm going to come down onto the floor and make sure that my elbows are no wider than my shoulders. And now we get to lace up the hands. The fingers stay separate, or the pinkies stay separate. So one pinky tucks under. That way it's just a little more comfortable in the fingers. And I'm going to push down. So with this intention of driving and keeping the elbows framed, I'm not going to put my head on the floor yet as I lift the knees. So I can nod my head yes, shake my head no, and there's tons of elevation as I drive through the forearms. Maybe walk the toes in a little closer. Now this starts to depend on your hamstring flexibility. I'm a little tight this morning, so I'm not walking that close in. Getting that overhead press, that broadness of the shoulders. We're really starting to test the attention span of your shoulders here. So what I mean by that is as you hang out and start to burn up, you're going to start to wilt, the head gets closer to the ground, so at each moment I'm reinforcing that press, that broadness through the shoulders. Still, my head is nowhere near the ground. And then I'm going to drop and melt. So that's a prerequisite to doing a full headstand. If you can hang out there in the forearms for like a good 8 to 10 breaths, then you have a good foundation to build up with your headstand. But if your headstand is just like scrunching down into the neck and suddenly your shoulders are around your ears, maybe that's not such a healthy pattern to encourage. So we'll play one more time here. Again, I'm going to make sure my elbows are shoulder width apart. I'm going to lace my fingers but not my pinkies, so the blades of both pinkies get to be on the ground. My thumbs are up and I'm going to make sure not to spill them out. I'm going to push down, so elevating, spreading my shoulders, getting upside down. Walking the toes forward so I become more lifted. This sends my hips further up over my shoulders. And still I'm nodding my head yes, shaking my head no, I'm nowhere near the ground yet. Spending as much time here as you can keep a good quality movement. So for some of you, you might be done already. Some of you might want to stay longer. And then melt down. Good. Roll up. So seeing how that relates to headstands, and we might do a headstand at the end of this video. You might not, even just repeating that work, but using that headstand prep to create more release through the shoulders. So it's a good way to heat up the shoulders. I'm going to contrast that shape, weave the hands around behind the back, pull the hands together and down, so my hands are moving down towards my tail. As I, in contrast, lift through the throat, and again, explore the neck, and maybe tick-tock my ears from side to side. And look left and right. And we'll play with that one more time. Now, option, depending on your shoulder mobility, we'll do one more phrase of heat and then we're going to release across here. So we're powering up all this, reaching overhead. I'm going to use a block. You can use a book or any object that offers a frame. And I'm going to put the L shape of my hands inside the block. So this creates even more external rotation. So it's a little more challenging. It may or may not be available in your shoulders. You can come back to prayer hands if you want. So either prayer hands or L shapes framed around that block, and my forearms are like parallel train tracks. I'm going to push the floor, so I'm elevating and I'm also rotating. And then I'm going to get upside down as I lift the knees, and my head is miles and miles away from the floor. And that frame is just keeping my hands away from each other. And I'm testing the constant attention of pushing the floor, of spreading the shoulders, elevating and externally rotating. And yet there's freedom in the neck. And maybe the feet walk a little further in. Now again, you might already be back down on your knees. You might want to stay even longer than I am. And eventually, once you feel that you're losing the quality of the movement, you're going to eventually ooze down and we'll roll up. And while you're here, pausing, so creating heat and release, heat and release. Again, I'm going to lace the hands around behind my back. Now I have a little pistol grip here, and I'm going to take that pistol grip around my left hip. So now I have a deeper stretch through the right shoulder. I'm going to really massage that right shoulder down, so I'm retracting and depressing that shoulder blade. I'm going to drop tall through the spine, and I'm going to drop away as I look up and look down. Maybe loop that shoulder and wiggle it out a little bit. And we'll come up, we'll switch sides. So I'm going to lace that grip around the other hip, really retracting and depressing the left shoulder down. And the head rocks to the side. And keep questioning, exploring. Maybe you're finding little movements that no one else found. Or maybe you're just staying with something really simple if that feels therapeutic. And then coming back up, we'll come back to downward dog. Roll up onto the tippy toes. Roll forward plank all the way down. We haven't done one upward dog yet, and we're going to use that pulling action of upward dog. So I'm going to bring my hands back. I'm going to grip the floor and slowly roll up into an upward dog. Notice how this is the opposite of all that overhead work. So I'm going to grip and pull my shoulders, move together and down as I open through the chest. And you can continue to free the neck. And then notice as we look down, we'll roll back to downward dog and notice how, again, the shoulders elevate, the shoulders externally rotate.
So upward dog and downward dog really contrast each other as far as the upper body is concerned. Good. And dance more smoothly through plank, upward dog, downward dog, just one time. And drop to kneeling. Sit back to child's pose. Roll your way up.
So I will teach headstand proper another day. If you know how to do it, go for it. I'm just going to drill as far as we went before, taking the knees up and then taking one leg up. So again, if you go into full headstand, I salute you, but I'll do a separate video on learning full headstands. Either way, you're gonna set up your prep. I'm gonna fold so that both pinkies can be on the ground. And I'm gonna push the floor, get that engagement up through the shoulders. I'm gonna lift. And again, if you're slotting your head into the grip and you're heading towards a full headstand, awesome. For now, for today, just working the intention of keeping the power in the shoulders. My head is not on the ground, so I'm not personally setting up a full headstand. And just slowly tiptoeing in, getting as upside down as I can, and then see, can you take one leg up into the air? And that flying leg is like a jet engine. That should take some of the weight up off of your shoulders in a sense. Keep squaring the belly as you use your inner thighs, lifting through the core so you don't wind up rolling open. Come back and switch. Keep that constant push. So if your head is on the ground, reinforce push the floor. Get your head back up off the ground unless you're doing a headstand. If you're with me, that flying leg is reaching, reaching, reaching. I'm going to put the foot back down. And drop to kneeling. Rock back on the heels. Open the soles of the feet. And really loop out the shoulders. Take the arms up for a second. You're going to cactus out as we did before. My hands are really pressing back. My elbows are really squeezing down. I'm lifting through the throat in contrast. So if sitting on the feet after a while really kills you, you can come up to kneeling as well. But my fingers now are going to point down, and I'm actually trying to touch the floor. And at the same time, my throat is moving upward in the opposite direction. As I test the attention span, reaching down just as much as I tested it up overhead. I'm going to explore the neck. And then I'm going to paddle, so notice the change in position, internally rotating, paddling the hands back, really activating back. Throat's moving up, fingers reaching back. Lace the hands here, keep that active reach back. If it's really tight to gather the fingers together, you could hold a yoga belt behind you, which might give you a little more space. Then I'm going to bow into a child's pose and take that grip up and over. And peel back up.
downward dog. Plank to the floor. You're melting to the floor, as I just did. I'm going to point the toes, roll back. I'm going to grip and just create a little bit of a cobra here in the interest of retracting even a little with a little more specific intention. Legs are quietly engaged, so thighs awake, glutes awake, belly awake, while we're thinking about the upper body so much. And then I'm going to lace the hands back, and again, one hand pulls against the other. So just as much overhead work I want to do, countering in the opposite direction. Neck is still free. And releasing down. Bringing the head underneath, bring the hands underneath your head. Tick-tock the heels, take a couple of big breaths. Good. We'll play one more time here. Now this time, I'm going to grab my hands back. I'm going to pull into a little bit of a cobra as we did before. A few options. You can reach back and lace the hands as we did, or you might catch opposite elbows. Or I'm going to melt for a second, come to prayer hands behind my back. I'm looking to bring the index fingers and the thumbs into each other. This is very strongly working in the opposite direction as I retract and depress in order to bring my hands closer into each other. You can keep the head on the floor if this is really too strong. Again, if that doesn't suit you, you can catch the elbows instead. This is a good step in that direction. Or you can repeat lacing the hands behind the head or behind your back. And slowly melt it down. Shake off the legs. Wiggle the shoulders. Bring your hands back into chaturanga position, gently rolling up. Enough upward dog to allow an easy swing back to all fours. And then keep playing, arching and curling. We started really loose, so we'll come back to that freedom. Experimenting, shaking off the sequence and using that sequence and hopefully that deeper connection and awareness to massage and continue to discover our movement patterns. Maybe drop an elbow and then the other. Maybe creating more advanced shapes. Maybe time for you to pause the video and continue on a more advanced or more creative movement journey. The cat is snoring. When you're ready, coming into a place of stillness. However that looks for you, it might be seated meditation, it might be melting on the floor. Now, however it takes shape, as we transition from movement down towards stillness, we're staying really curious. What doesn't change is the interest with the body in the present moment. The practice of self-discovery, the practice of fully being present as we are.
Instead of using the exhales for strength, instead of thinking about technique, I'm going to use my exhales for melt. As I think about opening and surrendering into resting on the floor.